He never expected to open his door to 3 sobbing little girls at midnight, let alone discover they held the key to a fortune he never knew existed. But when a struggling single father hears desperate knocking and finds 3 sisters abandoned by their stepfather, something extraordinary begins to unfold. What started as an act of compassion would uncover a decades-old mystery that changed everything. The girls he rescued from the streets would lead him to a discovery worth millions, but more importantly, to a family he thought he'd lost forever. Sometimes, the greatest treasures aren't gold or silver. They're the people who walk into your life when you least expect it, carrying secrets that will transform your world forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Rain hammered against the windows of 42 Maple Grove Street like an angry fist demanding entry. Inside the small 2-bedroom apartment, Thomas Martinez sat hunched over a stack of overdue bills, the blue glow of his laptop screen casting shadows across his exhausted face. At 34, he looked older, worn down by 18 months of single parenthood and the relentless pressure of keeping his world from completely falling apart. His 8-year-old son, Carlos, had been asleep for hours, but Thomas remained at the kitchen table, calculator in one hand, coffee mug in the other, trying to make numbers add up that simply refused to cooperate. The rent notice glowed accusingly from beneath a pile of medical bills. Carlos's asthma medication wasn't getting any cheaper, and Thomas's job at the warehouse barely covered the basics. Emily Collins, who lived in the apartment next door, had been watching this nightly ritual for weeks through her thin walls. As a social worker for Riverside County, she'd seen countless families struggling to stay afloat, but there was something particularly heartbreaking about watching Thomas's quiet desperation unfold night after night. She tried to offer help, bringing over leftover dinner, offering to watch Carlos when Thomas worked overtime, but Thomas was proudly independent, the kind of man who'd rather skip meals than accept charity. Emily had her own story of loss. 3 years ago, she'd lost her younger sister Amanda in a car accident, and the grief had nearly destroyed her. Work became her salvation. Helping other families heal gave her purpose when her own life felt meaningless. But lately, she'd been struggling with burnout, questioning whether she was making any real difference in a system that seemed designed to fail the people who needed it most. The apartment building itself seemed to mirror the struggles of its residents. Built in the 1970s, it was showing its age. Peeling paint in the hallways, a broken elevator that hadn't worked in 6 months, and plumbing that groaned and protested with every use. But the rent was affordable. And for single parents like Thomas, affordable meant everything. Thomas's story had begun 2 years earlier, when his wife, Maria, walked out without warning. No fight, no explanation, just a note on the kitchen counter saying she couldn't do it anymore. The divorce papers came 3 months later, along with her complete abandonment of any parental responsibility. Thomas had been devastated, not just by the betrayal, but by the sudden reality of raising Carlos alone while working full-time and trying to keep up with a mortgage they could no longer afford. The foreclosure had forced them into the apartment, and Thomas had been playing catch-up. Ever since, every month was a careful calculation of which bills could wait, which couldn't, and how to stretch grocery money to last until the next paycheck. He'd sold everything of value, Maria's jewelry, their wedding rings, even his beloved guitar. But it still wasn't enough. Carlos, bless him, seemed oblivious to most of the struggle. He was a bright, energetic boy who loved soccer and dinosaurs in equal measure. But Thomas had noticed the way his son's eyes lingered on toys in store windows, how he never asked for anything anymore, how he'd started rationing his own snacks to make them last longer. The guilt of not being able to provide more ate at Thomas. Constantly, Emily had been working late that Tuesday evening, reviewing case files for 3 families she was trying to keep together. The Martinez family wasn't technically one of her cases. They lived in her building by coincidence, but she'd found herself unofficially looking out for them anyway. She'd watched Thomas leave for his second job at the gas station, Carlos staying with the elderly Mrs. Chen from down the hall, who charged almost nothing for babysitting because she understood what it meant to struggle. The social services system Emily worked within was overwhelmed and underfunded. Too many families, too few resources, and too many bureaucratic hoops that kept help from reaching the people who needed it most. She'd seen good parents lose their families over financial problems that could have been solved with temporary assistance. She'd seen others fall through cracks in the system, disappearing into homelessness or worse. That night, as Emily finally closed her laptop and prepared for bed, she could hear Thomas moving around next door. The soft scrape of a chair, the rustle of papers, the occasional frustrated sigh. She'd been tempted to knock, to offer to help with whatever financial puzzle he was trying to solve, but she'd learned that pride was often the last thing people had left, and taking it away rarely helped anyone. Thomas, for his part, had no idea that Emily even knew about his struggles. He was careful to maintain appearances. Carlos always went to school clean and fed. Their apartment was spotless despite its age. And Thomas himself never looked anything less than put together when he left for work. The mask of competence he wore was as much for his own sanity as it was for Carlos's security. But masks were exhausting to maintain, and lately Thomas had been feeling the weight of carrying everything alone. He had no family nearby. His parents had died when Carlos was a baby, and Maria's family had cut all contact after the divorce. His friends from before marriage had drifted away during the chaos of new parenthood, and making new friends felt impossible when every free moment was devoted to survival. The warehouse job was steady but physical, and at 34, Thomas was already feeling the strain in his back and knees. The night shifts at the gas station brought in extra money, but left him running on 3 hours of sleep most days. He knew it wasn't sustainable, but every other option seemed worse. Better jobs required education he didn't have time to get, and any gap in income would mean losing the apartment. Emily, meanwhile, carried her own burden of witnessing so much need without having enough resources to address it. Her caseload was supposed to be 15 families. She currently had 28. Her supervisor kept promising additional staff, but budget cuts meant those promises remained empty. Some nights, she lay awake wondering if the family she didn't have time to visit thoroughly was the one that would fall apart while she was stretched too thin elsewhere. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Emily, whose job was helping struggling families, lived next door to a struggling family she wasn't allowed to officially help. Thomas, who would have benefited enormously from the kind of support Emily provided professionally, was too proud to accept help from a neighbor and too overwhelmed to navigate the social services system on his own. Neither of them could have imagined that within 24 hours, their separate struggles would become intertwined in a way that would change both their lives forever. Neither could have predicted that 3 little girls would soon appear at Thomas's door, carrying with them not just immediate crisis, but the keys to solving mysteries that reached back decades. The rain continued to fall that Tuesday night, washing the streets clean while leaving the troubles inside untouched. Thomas finally closed his laptop around 2 a.m., no closer to solving his financial puzzle than when he'd started. Emily fell asleep with case files scattered around her bed, dreaming of families she couldn't quite save. Both of them went to sleep, believing they understood the boundaries of their world, the limits of their resources, and the scope of their own capacity to help others. Tomorrow would prove them wrong in the most extraordinary way possible. Emily was jolted awake at 11:47 p.m. by the sound of frantic knocking echoing through the thin walls. At first, she thought she was dreaming. The knocking was too urgent, too desperate to be real. But as consciousness fully returned, she realized the sound was coming from Thomas's apartment next door. Through her bedroom wall, she could hear muffled voices, then Thomas's door opening. "Please, mister, we don't have anywhere else to go." The voice was high-pitched, young, and absolutely terrified. Emily sat up in bed, her social worker instincts immediately alert. In her line of work, she'd learned to recognize the sound of genuine distress, and this was it. Thomas had answered his door in pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair disheveled from the few hours of sleep he'd managed to get. Standing on his doorstep were 3 little girls, soaking wet from the rain that had intensified since he'd gone to bed. They couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, and they were clearly sisters. All 3 had the same dark curls, the same wide brown eyes, and the same expression of absolute terror. "We're sorry to bother you," the tallest one said, her voice shaking. "But our stepfather, he said we couldn't come back. He put our stuff in garbage bags and told us to find somewhere else to live." Thomas stared at them, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. 3 little girls alone in the middle of the night with nowhere to go. Behind them on the walkway, he could see 3 black garbage bags, presumably containing all their worldly possessions. "Where's your mother?" Thomas asked gently, crouching down to their eye level. "She's in the hospital," the middle girl said, her voice barely a whisper. "She's been there for 2 weeks. Stepfather Randy said he's not responsible for us anymore, since we're not really his. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now back to the story. Emily, meanwhile, had quietly gotten dressed and was now standing by her door, listening intently. Every professional instinct she had was screaming that this was an emergency situation that required immediate intervention. But it was nearly midnight, and the emergency services system would likely place these girls in temporary foster care with strangers while they sorted out the situation. That could take days or weeks, and meanwhile, 3 terrified little ones would be bounced between unfamiliar homes. Thomas looked at the girls, really looked at them. Their clothes were clean but ill-fitting, like they'd been dressed hastily. They were shivering from cold and fear, and the way they huddled together told him they'd been taking care of each other for a while now. "What are your names?" he asked. Softly. "I'm Isabella," said the tallest. "This is Sophia and this is Charlotte. We're triplets, but not identical. We're 8. Thomas felt something twist in his chest. 8 years old, the same age as Carlos. He tried to imagine his son standing on a stranger's doorstep in the rain, abandoned and frightened, and the thought made him physically ill. "How did you know to come here?" he asked. "Mrs. Chen told us," Isabella explained. "She said you were a good daddy and that you might help. She gave us your apartment number before Randy made her leave." Thomas realized they were talking about Mrs. Chen from down the hall, the elderly woman who sometimes watched Carlos. She must have witnessed whatever scene had played out at the girl's previous home. The fact that she'd sent them to him meant she trusted him, but it also meant she probably couldn't take them in herself. "Are you hungry?" Thomas asked, and all 3 girls nodded vigorously. That simple question changed everything. The moment Thomas asked about their basic needs, he'd mentally crossed a line from concerned bystander to protector. He couldn't send them back out into the rain. He couldn't abandon them to wander the streets at midnight, and he couldn't pretend he hadn't seen their desperation. "Come inside," he said, stepping back to let them in. "Let's get you dried off and fed, and then we'll figure out what to do." Through her wall, Emily heard Thomas's door close and the sound of movement in his apartment. She debated whether to intervene professionally or let Thomas handle the situation. Her training said she should call Child Protective Services immediately, but her experience told her that bureaucratic solutions weren't always the best ones, especially in the middle of the night. Inside Thomas's apartment, the girls stood uncertainly. In the living room, still dripping rainwater onto his carpet. They looked around with wide eyes, taking in the small but clean space, the homework spread across the kitchen table, the soccer ball in the corner that obviously belonged to Carlos. "Is that your little boy's ball?" Sophia asked quietly. "Yes, that's Carlos's. He's asleep in his room. You'll meet him in the morning." Thomas grabbed some towels from the bathroom and handed them out. "Here, dry your hair. I'll make you something to eat." As he rummaged through his limited pantry, Thomas's mind was racing. What was he doing? He could barely afford to feed himself and Carlos, and now he'd invited 3 more mouths to the table. He had no idea how to care for 3 little girls. He didn't even know if what he was doing was legal. But when he turned around and saw them, sitting huddled together on his couch, wrapped in his towels, he knew he'd made the right choice. Whatever complications this brought, he couldn't have lived with himself if he'd turned them away. "Tell me about your stepfather," Thomas said gently as he heated up some leftover soup. "When did this happen?" "Tonight," Charlotte spoke for the first time, her voice so quiet he had to strain to hear her. "He came home mad about something, and he started yelling about how we weren't his responsibility. He said our real father should take care of us, but we don't know who our real father is." Isabella continued the story. "He packed our clothes in garbage bags and told us we had 20 minutes to get out. We didn't know where to go, so we walked around for a while until we remembered Mrs. Chen talking about the nice man with the little boy who lived in this building." Thomas served them bowls of soup and watched as they ate with the focused intensity of truly hungry ones. They had beautiful manners, saying please and thank you, eating quietly, not asking for seconds even though they'd clearly finished everything. "Where were you living before?" Thomas asked. "In the house on Elm Street," Sophia said. "But Randy said it's his house and we can't stay there anymore." "What about other family? Grandparents, aunts or uncles?" All 3 girls shook their heads. "Mama said our grandparents died before we were born," Isabella explained. "And she didn't have any brothers or sisters. Our real daddy, Mama said he left when we were babies and never came back." Emily, who had been listening to the muffled conversation through the wall, finally made a decision. She quietly left her apartment and knocked softly on Thomas's door. When Thomas opened it, he was surprised to see his neighbor standing there in jeans and a sweatshirt, her face full of concern. "I'm Emily Collins from next door," she said quietly. "I'm also a social worker with Riverside County. I couldn't help overhearing, and I think I might be able to help." Thomas looked back at the 3 girls on his couch, then at Emily. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted, "but I couldn't send them back out there." Emily stepped into the apartment and immediately assessed the situation with professional eyes. 3 frightened but unharmed girls, clean and being fed, in the care of a man who was clearly overwhelmed but trying his best. This was actually one of the better emergency placements she'd seen. "You did the right thing," she said softly. "Let me see what we can do to make this work legally and safely." And with those words, Emily became part of a situation that would change all their lives forever. None of them knew it yet. But those 3 little girls carried with them more than just the trauma of abandonment. Hidden in their past was a secret that would unlock possibilities none of them had ever imagined. The night that had started with desperate knocking would become the first page of a story that would amaze everyone involved. Emily spent the rest of that first night on Thomas's couch, making phone calls and filling out emergency placement paperwork while Thomas tried to figure out sleeping arrangements for 3 additional people in his tiny apartment. The girls had finally fallen asleep around 2 a.m., huddled together on Carlos's top bunk, while Carlos moved to the bottom, too excited by the unexpected sleepover to complain about the disruption. "This is temporary," Emily kept reminding Thomas, as she worked through the bureaucratic maze on her laptop, "just until we can locate proper family members or arrange official foster placement." But even as she said it, Emily was already seeing problems with that plan. The girls would likely be separated. Finding a foster family willing to take 3 siblings at once was nearly impossible. And their obvious attachment to each other, the way they instinctively protected one another, suggested that separation would be traumatic. Thomas sat at his kitchen table, looking at the 3 garbage bags the girls had brought with them. Inside, he'd found clothes that were clean but worn, a few books, some small toys, and a manila envelope containing what appeared to be important documents. The envelope held birth certificates, medical records, and a few photographs of the girls, with a woman who was presumably their mother. "Their mother's name is Maria Santos," Emily said, reading from the birth certificates. "Father is listed as unknown on all 3. They were born at Riverside General Hospital 8 years ago." Thomas studied the photographs. Maria Santos looked young in the pictures, maybe early 20s, with the same dark curls as her daughters. There were photos of her holding the girls as infants, playing with them as toddlers, and one recent school photo where all 3 girls wore matching dresses and bright smiles. "She doesn't look like someone who would abandon them," Thomas observed. "No, she doesn't," Emily agreed. "I'm going to visit her at the hospital tomorrow. The girls said she's been there for 2 weeks, which suggests something serious. If she's unable to care for them temporarily, we need to understand the situation better." By morning, Thomas was running on 0 sleep and pure adrenaline. The girls woke up early, quiet and polite, helping Carlos make his bed and asking if they could help with breakfast. Thomas watched them interact with his son, marveling at how naturally they fell into a protective big sister role, despite being the same age. "Carlos, these are my new friends," Isabella said formally. "We're going to stay here for a little while, if that's okay with your daddy." "Okay with your daddy." Carlos, who had been an only young person for 8 years, was thrilled to have companions. "Do you want to see my dinosaur collection?" he asked eagerly, and soon all 4 youngsters were examining his treasured plastic figures while Thomas tried to figure out how to stretch 1 box of cereal to feed 4 hungry mouths. Emily returned that afternoon with groceries and troubling news about Maria Santos. "She's in intensive care with complications from diabetes," she told Thomas quietly, while the youngsters played in the living room. "She's been in a diabetic coma for 2 weeks. The doctors say recovery is possible, but it could take months, and there might be lasting effects." Thomas felt his heart sink. "So the girls might not have a mother to go back to." "It's too early to tell, but we need to plan for the possibility that this arrangement might last longer than we initially thought." That evening, Emily helped Thomas call his supervisor at the warehouse to request a few days off to handle the emergency. His boss, Mr. Peterson, was understanding, but pointed out that Thomas had already used most of his sick leave caring for Carlos during a bout with pneumonia earlier that year. "I can give you 3 days, Peterson said. "After that, I need you back on your regular schedule, or I'll have to find someone else." Thomas knew he couldn't afford to lose his primary job, but he also couldn't leave 3 traumatized 8-year-olds alone while he worked overnight shifts. The math of his situation had gone from difficult to impossible overnight. Emily watched him struggle with these realities and found herself making decisions that went far beyond her professional responsibilities. "I can adjust my schedule to help," she offered, "at least until we figure out a more permanent solution." "I can't ask you to do that," Thomas protested. "You have your own job, your own caseload." "I'm not asking for permission," Emily said firmly. "These girls need stability right now, and you're providing that. I'm just making sure you can continue to do it." The first week was a blur of adjustment and crisis management. Thomas discovered that raising 3 additional youngsters required skills he'd never developed. The girls were helpful and well-behaved, but they each had different needs, different fears, and different ways of processing their trauma. Charlotte, the quietest of the 3, barely spoke above a whisper and startled at sudden noises. Sophia was the peacemaker, constantly checking on her sisters and trying to anticipate problems before they occurred. Isabella, the natural leader, had taken on a responsibility for her sisters that no 8-year-old should have to carry. Thomas found himself shopping for clothes in thrift stores, trying to figure out hair braiding techniques from YouTube videos, and learning the complicated social dynamics of having 4 youngsters share one small bathroom every morning. His grocery bill tripled overnight. His utility bills increased from longer showers and more laundry, and his already tight budget stretched to the breaking point. Emily became his lifeline during those first difficult days. She helped with school, enrollment paperwork, coordinated with the hospital to monitor Maria's condition, and used her professional connections to access resources that might help. But she was also learning to navigate the personal side of involvement, how to be helpful without overstepping, how to support Thomas without making him feel incompetent. "I've never done anything like this before," Thomas admitted to her one evening after the youngsters were asleep. "I don't know if I'm doing it right." "None of us know what we're doing," Emily replied. "But look at them. They're eating regularly, they're safe, they're starting to smile again. Carlos has become like a brother to them. You're doing better than you think." But Thomas was struggling with more than just the practical challenges. His own grief and abandonment issues, triggered by Maria's sudden disappearance from their lives, had begun surfacing in unexpected ways. Some nights he lay awake wondering if he was strong enough to be what 4 youngsters needed, or if his own brokenness would somehow damage them further. Emily was dealing with her own complications. Her supervisor had noticed her reduced availability for her regular caseload and was asking questions about her personal involvement in an unofficial placement. Professionally, she was walking a fine line by facilitating an arrangement that existed outside normal channels. But every time she considered stepping back, she saw how much progress the girls were making in Thomas's care. The breakthrough came during the 2nd week, when Charlotte finally spoke up during dinner. "Mr. Thomas," she said quietly, "are you going to send us away when Mama gets better?" Thomas looked at her serious little face and felt something shift inside him. "Charlotte, as long as you need a place to stay, you have one here. All 3 of you. Even if it takes a really long time," Sophia asked. "Even if it takes a really long time," Thomas confirmed. Emily watched this exchange and realized that somewhere in the chaos of the past 2 weeks, Thomas had stopped thinking of this as temporary emergency help and started thinking of it as his family. The transformation wasn't complete yet. There were still legal hurdles to overcome and financial realities to address, but the emotional commitment had been made. That night, as Emily helped Thomas fold laundry that now included tiny dresses and colorful socks, she noticed him studying a family photo the girls had brought with them. In it, Maria Santos held her 3 daughters in front of what looked like a large house with ornate gates. "That's an expensive-looking neighborhood," Emily observed. Thomas nodded. "I've been wondering about that too. If Maria could afford to live somewhere like that, how did the girls end up in such a desperate situation?" It was a question that would soon lead them to discoveries neither of them could have imagined. But for now, they were focused on the immediate challenges of building a family from necessity, love, and sheer determination. Outside, autumn was settling over Riverside, and inside the small apartment on Maple Grove Street, 7 people were learning to become something more than the sum of their individual struggles. They were becoming home for each other. 3 weeks into their new arrangement, Emily began to notice remarkable changes during her daily visits to Thomas's apartment. What had started as crisis management was evolving into something that looked surprisingly like a functioning family. The chaos of those first days had settled into routines that worked for everyone involved. Thomas had developed systems that would have impressed any organizational expert. Morning schedules were posted on the refrigerator, with each person assigned specific bathroom times and breakfast duties. The girls had taken over laundry folding, which they turned into a game with Carlos, seeing who could make the neatest piles. Homework happened at the kitchen table every day at 4 p.m., with Thomas helping where he could and Emily filling in the gaps with subjects he found challenging. "You've become quite the multitasker," Emily observed one afternoon, watching Thomas help Sophia with math problems while simultaneously braiding Charlotte's hair and monitoring Carlos and Isabella as they practiced reading together. "I had to," Thomas replied, carefully working through a particularly stubborn tangle. "4 kids don't wait for you to figure things out one at a time." The transformation in Thomas himself was perhaps the most remarkable change Emily witnessed. The exhausted, overwhelmed man she'd watched through her walls had been replaced by someone who moved with purpose and confidence. He'd lost weight from the increased activity and irregular meals, but he'd gained something more valuable, a sense of being needed that went beyond just paying bills and surviving day to day. The girls, too, were blossoming in ways that amazed. Emily's professional eye. Charlotte, who had barely whispered during those first few days, now chatted regularly with Carlos about their shared love of drawing. She'd filled an entire notebook with pictures of their new family, always drawing Thomas tall and strong in the center, surrounded by 4 smiling faces. Sophia had appointed herself the household's emotional caretaker, somehow intuiting when Thomas was stressed about money or when one of her sisters was having a difficult day. Emily watched her slip her hand into Thomas's during a particularly overwhelming trip to the grocery store, providing comfort with the wisdom of someone far older than her 8 years. Isabella had embraced her role as big sister, not just to her biological sisters, but to Carlos as well. She helped him with his soccer practice in the small courtyard behind their building, taught him card games she'd learned from their mother, and fiercely defended him when older kids at school made fun of his second-hand clothes. But perhaps the most beautiful development was Carlos's transformation from only youngster to protective brother. Emily watched him share his most treasured possessions without being asked, include the girls in his friendship groups at school, and take on responsibilities around the house that would have been unthinkable just a month earlier. "They're good for each other," Emily told her supervisor during one of their increasingly frequent check-ins about the unofficial placement. "The girls have given Carlos siblings he never would have had, and he's given them stability and normalcy they desperately needed. Thomas had started keeping a journal, partly at Emily's suggestion for documenting the girls' adjustment, but mostly because he found himself wanting to remember the small moments that made up their days. He wrote about Isabella's pride when she successfully helped Carlos with a difficult homework problem, about Charlotte's growing confidence as she raised her hand more often in class, about Sophia's infectious giggle when they all piled together. "On the couch for movie nights, October 28th, he wrote one evening. "Today, Sophia asked me if I would teach her to tie her shoes the way I taught Carlos. Such a small thing, but when she said, 'Daddy Thomas, will you show me?' my heart nearly stopped. They're starting to see me as more than just the man who took them in. They're starting to see me as their father." Emily had been documenting the situation as well, but from her professional perspective. Her notes tracked the girls' emotional stability, their academic performance, their social integration, and their attachment to Thomas and Carlos. What she was seeing exceeded every positive outcome she could have hoped for in an emergency placement situation. The girls had enrolled at Carlos's elementary school, where their teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had been briefed on their situation and was monitoring their adjustment carefully. All three were academically advanced for their age, suggesting that Maria had prioritized their education before her illness. They read voraciously, consuming every book Thomas could check out from the library, and often helped other students with their assignments. They're remarkable youngsters, Mrs. Rodriguez told Emily during a parent-teacher conference that Thomas couldn't attend due to work. Resilient, kind, intelligent. Whatever that man is doing at home, it's working. But Emily was also noticing things that didn't quite add up. The girls spoke casually about experiences that suggested a very different lifestyle than their current circumstances. Isabella mentioned horseback riding lessons as if they were routine. Charlotte drew pictures of elaborate birthday parties with what looked like professional decorations. Sophia knew French phrases she'd learned from Mama's friend Philippe. These details, combined with the photograph of Maria in front of the expensive house, had Emily's investigative instincts on high alert. During her hospital visits to check on Maria's condition, she'd started asking more detailed questions about the family's background. The patient has had very few visitors, reported Maria's primary nurse, a kind woman named Janet, who'd worked at Riverside General for 20 years. Just one man who came the first week she was admitted, but he stopped coming after that, said he wasn't family and couldn't be responsible for her medical decisions. "Can you describe him?" Emily asked. "Older gentleman, well-dressed. Expensive. Suit. Nice watch." He seemed genuinely concerned about her condition, but also angry, like he was upset about something beyond just her being sick. Emily made a mental note to investigate this mysterious visitor further. She'd also started researching Maria Santos more thoroughly, using resources available through her position with social services. What she was finding raised more questions than answers. Public records showed that Maria had no employment history in Riverside, no rental agreements, no utility bills in her name. For someone who had lived in the area long enough for her daughters to attend local schools, she had remarkably little paper trail. The address listed on the girls' school enrollment forms led to a house that had been sold 6 months earlier, to a family named Johnson, who had never heard of Maria Santos. "It's like she was living under the radar," Emily told Thomas one evening as they put the finishing touches on a Halloween costume for Charlotte, who had decided to be an artist for trick-or-treating. Either she was very private or she was hiding from something. Thomas looked up from the paint palette he was helping Charlotte create. Hiding from what? That's what I'm trying to figure out. But Thomas, I think there's more to this family's story than we know. The girls' behavior, their education level, some of the things they say. I don't think they were living in poverty before Randy abandoned them. This conversation was interrupted by Isabella's excited voice from the living room. "Daddy Thomas, look what I found!" She came running into the kitchen holding a small, leather-bound book that had apparently fallen out of one of their garbage bags during a recent cleaning session. The book was clearly old and expensive, with "property of" embossed in gold lettering. On the front cover, Thomas took the book carefully. The name written inside the front cover in elegant script made his breath catch: Victoria Elizabeth Ashworth. "Who's Victoria?" Isabella asked innocently. Emily and Thomas exchanged looks. None of the documents they'd seen had mentioned anyone named Victoria Ashworth. "I don't know, sweetheart," Thomas said carefully. "But maybe this book will help us find out." That night, after the youngsters were asleep, Emily and Thomas examined the book more carefully. It appeared to be a journal with entries dating back 15 years. The handwriting was sophisticated, the paper expensive, and many of the entries mentioned charitable events, social gatherings, and business meetings that suggested significant wealth. "Look at this entry," Emily said, pointing to a page dated 9 years earlier. "She's writing about being pregnant with triplets, about how excited she is to become a mother. Thomas, I think Victoria Ashworth is Maria Santos." "You mean she changed her name? Or she's been living under an assumed name?" But why would someone with this kind of background end up in Riverside using a false identity? As they read further into the journal, they began to piece together a story that was far more complex than either of them had imagined. Victoria Ashworth had been wealthy, connected, and apparently deeply in love with someone she referred to only as R in her entries. But the most shocking discovery came in an entry dated 8 years and 3 months earlier. R says his family will never accept me or the babies. He says I have to choose between my old life and my new one. I choose my daughters, always my daughters. Tomorrow we disappear and Victoria Ashworth ceases to exist. I will become Maria Santos and we will build a life where love matters more than money. Emily felt her pulse quicken as the implications sank in. Thomas, she said quietly, I think these girls might be heiresses to a fortune they don't even know exists. Emily's discovery of Victoria Ashworth's journal had opened a door to questions that demanded answers, but those answers would have to wait. The immediate reality was that word had begun to spread through their neighborhood about Thomas's unusual family situation, and the response was both surprising and heartwarming. It started with Mrs. Rodriguez, the girls' teacher, who mentioned the remarkable triplets to her friend Susan at the local community center. Susan, who ran after-school programs, offered free tutoring services when she learned about Thomas's work schedule challenges. Soon, a network of support was forming around their little family that none of them had expected. I don't understand why everyone wants to help, Thomas confided to Emily one afternoon as they sorted through donations that had appeared on his doorstep. Mrs. Chen from down the hall had organized a clothing drive among the building's residents, resulting in bags of winter coats, boots, and warm pajamas in exactly the right sizes. People need to believe in good things, Emily replied, watching Isabella carefully organize the donated items into piles for each family member. Your story gives them hope that kindness still matters. The ripple effects extended beyond their apartment building. Mr. Peterson, Thomas's supervisor at the warehouse, had initially been frustrated by Thomas's need for schedule flexibility. But when he learned the full story, how Thomas had taken in 3 abandoned girls without hesitation, his attitude shifted completely. Martinez, Peterson had said during a break, you're doing something most people wouldn't have the guts to do. Let me see what I can do about adjusting your shifts so you're home when those kids need you. That conversation led to Thomas being transferred to day shifts with slightly better pay, eliminating the need for his second job at the gas station. For the first time in months, Thomas would be home for dinner every night and able to help with homework and bedtime routines. Emily watched these developments with professional fascination and personal joy. In her years as a social worker, she'd seen how community support could make or break a family's success, but she'd rarely witnessed it forming so organically around a situation that had started as pure crisis. The local library became another unexpected source of support. When librarian Margaret Davis learned that Thomas was raising 4 youngsters on a warehouse salary, she quietly waived all late fees and started setting aside new arrivals she thought the family would enjoy. The girls' voracious reading habits had caught her attention, and she made it her mission to keep them supplied with books that challenged their advanced reading levels. These girls are special, Margaret told Emily during one of their regular visits. Not just smart, but thoughtful. They read to the younger patrons during story time, and they're always helping other youngsters find books they might like. They have an elegance about them that's unusual for their age. Emily filed away Margaret's observation, along with the growing list of evidence suggesting the girl's privileged background. but she was also learning to balance her investigative instincts with the more immediate needs of helping Thomas navigate his expanding household. The community center became a second home for the family. Susan's after-school program provided a safe place for the youngsters while Thomas worked, and her staff had quickly fallen in love with their new students. Carlos bloomed under the attention of older mentors, while the triplets impressed everyone with their maturity and helpfulness with younger participants. They're natural leaders, Susan reported to Emily. Yesterday, Charlotte organized an art project for the kindergartners that was more creative than anything my trained staff had planned. And Isabella helped resolve a conflict between two boys without any adult intervention. These girls have emotional intelligence beyond their years. Dr. Patricia Williams, a retired pediatrician who volunteered at the community center, had taken a special interest in the family's welfare. She discreetly provided medical checkups for all 4 youngsters, ensuring their vaccinations were current and addressing minor health concerns that Thomas couldn't afford to handle through traditional healthcare channels. The girls are in excellent health, Dr. Williams assured Emily after her evaluations. Well-nourished, well-cared for, no signs of neglect or abuse. Whatever their previous living situation, they were clearly loved and properly cared for before this crisis. But Dr. Williams had also noticed something that added another piece to Emily's growing puzzle. They have dental work that suggests regular, high-quality care, she'd mentioned casually. Orthodontic consultations, preventive treatments, the kind of comprehensive care that requires both money and long-term planning. Emily was documenting these observations in her growing file on the family when she received an unexpected phone call that would change everything. The caller identified herself as Margaret Harrison, senior partner at Harrison, Sterling and Associates, a prestigious law firm in Los Angeles. I understand you're involved with the care of 3 girls who may be connected to the Ashworth family, Margaret said without preamble. I represent certain interests related to the Ashworth estate, and I believe we need to meet. Emily's heart began to race. I'm not sure what you're referring to, she said carefully, her social worker training kicking in. Ms. Collins, we've been searching for Victoria Ashworth and her daughters for nearly 8 years. If these are the girls I believe they are, there are legal matters that need immediate attention. The conversation lasted only a few more minutes, but it confirmed Emily's suspicions and raised the stakes considerably. After hanging up, she sat in her apartment staring at Victoria's journal, wondering how to tell Thomas that their quiet family life was about to become very complicated. Meanwhile, Thomas was experiencing his own revelation about the power of community support. That evening, as he helped the girls with their homework while Carlos practiced reading aloud, he reflected on how dramatically his world had expanded in just 5 weeks. Before the girls arrived, his universe had consisted of work, Carlos, and survival. Now he was part of a network that included teachers, librarians, community center staff, neighbors, and volunteers who had all invested themselves in his family's success. People stopped him on the street to ask about the girls, offered help without being asked, and treated him with a respect he hadn't experienced in years. Daddy Thomas, Sophia said, looking up from her math worksheet. Why do you think so many people want to help us? Thomas considered the question carefully. These girls had taught him to think before speaking, to consider how his words might affect their sense of security and self-worth. I think, he said slowly, that people recognize something special when they see it. You girls have been through something really hard, but you've stayed kind and helpful and loving. That inspires people to want to be their best selves too. Isabella nodded thoughtfully. Mrs. Rodriguez said we're lucky to have you, but I think you're lucky to have us too. I think you're right, Thomas agreed, smiling at her wisdom. What Thomas didn't know was that Emily was preparing to tell him that luck might have very little to do with their situation. The phone call from Margaret Harrison had made it clear. that the girl's arrival in his life might not have been the random act of fate he'd believed it to be. That night, after the youngsters were asleep, Emily knocked on Thomas's door with Victoria's journal in her hands and a printed copy of her research into the Ashworth family background. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "I think I know why someone was looking for Maria at the hospital, and I think I understand why she's been living under an assumed name." Thomas poured coffee and settled across from her at the kitchen table, where they'd had so many important conversations over the past month. "The girls aren't just orphaned youngsters whose mother got sick," Emily began. "If I'm right about what I've discovered, they're the missing heirs to one of California's largest family fortunes. And tomorrow, we're going to find out if that changes everything or nothing at all." As Emily began to explain her research findings, Thomas realized that their quiet family life was about to intersect with a world of wealth, power, and family secrets that none of them were prepared to navigate. But looking toward the bedroom, where 4 youngsters slept peacefully, trusting him to protect them, he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The community that had formed around them in 5 short weeks had given them strength they didn't know they possessed. Now they would find out if that strength was enough to protect the family they'd built when the outside world came calling. Margaret Harrison arrived at Emily's office the next morning in a black sedan that cost more than Thomas made in 2 years. She was exactly what Emily had expected, impeccably dressed, professionally intimidating, and armed with a briefcase full of documents that would shatter the peaceful life they'd built on Maple Grove Street. "The girls you're caring for are Victoria Elizabeth Ashworth's daughters," Margaret stated without preamble, spreading photographs across Emily's desk. Victoria was the only heir to the Ashworth textile fortune, worth approximately $47 million at the time of her disappearance 8 years ago. Emily studied the photographs with growing unease. They showed a younger Victoria at charity galas, board meetings, and social events. But the woman in these pictures bore only a passing resemblance to the Maria Santos, whose daughters were currently eating breakfast at Thomas's kitchen table. Victoria's father, Richard Ashworth, spent years searching for her after she vanished, Margaret continued. He died 2 years ago, leaving strict instructions that the estate should continue the search for his daughter and granddaughters. The family trust has been accumulating interest and investments. Those 3 girls are now worth over $60 million. "What does this mean for their current placement?" Emily asked, though she dreaded the answer. Margaret's expression softened slightly. "That depends on several factors. The trust requires that the girls be raised in a manner befitting their social position, with proper education, cultural opportunities, and preparation for their eventual role in managing the family foundation. A warehouse worker's apartment doesn't exactly meet those criteria." Emily felt her protective instincts flare. "Those girls are thriving where they are. They're loved, cared for, and emotionally stable for the first time since their mother's illness. I'm not questioning the quality of care they're receiving," Margaret replied diplomatically. "But there are legal obligations to consider. The trust has provisions for guardianship that specify certain requirements. Additionally, there are family members who have legitimate interests in the girls' welfare." The mention of family members sent a chill down Emily's spine. What family members? The girls said they had no other relatives. Victoria's cousin Bradford Ashworth has been serving as interim trustee of the estate. He's been quite concerned about locating the girls, especially given the responsibilities that come with their inheritance. He'll want to meet them immediately. That afternoon, Emily sat in Thomas's living room, watching him process information that threatened to destroy everything they'd built together. The girls were at the community center with Carlos, giving the adults time to discuss the impossible situation they now faced. $60 million, Thomas repeated numbly. "They're worth $60 million, and I've been buying their clothes at thrift stores." "The money doesn't change who they are," Emily said firmly. It doesn't change how much they need you or how much you love them, doesn't it? Thomas stood and began pacing the small room. Emily, look at this place. Look at me. I'm a single father who can barely afford to keep the lights on. How can I compete with people who have unlimited resources and legal rights? Emily had been dreading this conversation, but she'd also been preparing for it. We need to focus on what's best for the girls. They've been through enough trauma. Uprooting them again, separating them from the stability they've found here, that could be devastating. Thomas stopped pacing and looked at her with an expression she'd never seen before, raw fear mixed with determination. What do you need me to do? You need me to do? We need to document everything, every positive change, every sign of their adjustment, every piece of evidence that shows they're thriving in your care. We need character references, professional evaluations, proof that this placement is working. What they didn't know was that Bradford Ashworth was already making his own plans. The phone call Margaret Harrison made to him after her meeting with Emily had set in motion a series of events that would test every relationship Thomas and the girls had built. Bradford arrived in Riverside the following day with his own attorney, a private investigator, and very specific ideas about how his young cousins should be living. At 55, he was everything Thomas wasn't. Wealthy, educated, connected, and convinced that money could solve any problem. His first stop was the hospital, where he attempted to gain access to Maria's medical records and decision-making, authority as next of kin. His second stop was the elementary school, where he introduced himself to Mrs. Rodriguez as the girl's uncle and expressed concern about their temporary living arrangements. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been briefed by Emily about the possibility of family members appearing, was diplomatically non-committal, but she immediately called the community center to warn Susan that someone was asking questions about the girls. The news reached Thomas through their now extensive support network within hours of Bradford's arrival. By the time he got home from work, he found Emily waiting with a grim expression and a stack of legal documents. Bradford Ashworth filed for emergency custody this afternoon, Emily said without preamble. He's claiming that the girls are being kept from their family illegally and that their inheritance requires immediate protection through proper guardianship. Thomas sank into his chair, looking suddenly older than his 34 years. Can he do that? He can try, but Emily, we have something he doesn't expect. Documentation of the girls' progress, community support, and professional endorsements of this placement. Mrs. Rodriguez has written a letter. So has Dr. Williams, Margaret from the library, Susan from the community center. They're all willing to testify that removing the girls from your care would be harmful. The legal battle that was brewing would test more than just Thomas's determination to keep his family together. It would challenge every person who had invested themselves in the girls' welfare to stand up and fight for what they believed was right. That evening, Thomas found himself having one of the most difficult conversations of his life. The girls had returned from the community center full of excitement about their day, but Thomas knew he had to prepare them for what was coming. Girls, he said carefully, gathering them around the kitchen table where they'd shared so many meals and homework sessions, there's something important we need to talk about. Isabella, always the most perceptive, immediately sensed the seriousness of the situation. Are we in trouble? No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble, but we've learned some things about your mama's family that are going to change some things. For us, Thomas explained as gently as possible that their mother had family they'd never known about, and that these family members wanted to meet them. He didn't mention the money. That seemed too complex and potentially frightening for 8-year-olds to process. Do we have to go live with them? Charlotte asked quietly, her voice carrying the fear that Thomas had been dreading. I don't know yet, Thomas admitted. But I want you to know that no matter what happens, you'll always be my daughters. Legal papers can't change that. Money can't change that. Nothing can change that. Sophia, always the family's emotional barometer, began to cry. "We don't want to leave you and Carlos. This is our home. And we don't want you to leave either," Thomas replied, pulling her into a hug that quickly became a family embrace, including all 4 children. "So we're going to fight to stay together, okay? All of us." That night, after the children were asleep, Thomas and Emily sat on his small balcony, looking out at the city lights. Both of them were thinking about the impossible odds they faced, a warehouse worker and a county social worker against lawyers, money, and legal precedent. "What if we lose?" Thomas asked quietly. Emily was silent for a long moment before answering. "Then we'll have given them 6 weeks of unconditional love and stability that no one can ever take away from them. But Thomas, I don't think we're going to lose." "How can you be so sure? Because you're not fighting this alone. This whole community has invested in your family. People don't do that lightly, and they don't give up easily when something they believe in is threatened." Emily was right about the community's investment, but neither of them fully understood yet how powerful that investment would prove to be. The legal battle ahead would reveal not just the strength of their family bonds, but the extraordinary lengths that ordinary people would go to protect something they believed was worth saving. The challenge Bradford Ashworth represented wasn't just about money or legal rights. It was about 2 completely different philosophies of what family meant and what children needed to thrive. The battle lines were being drawn, and Thomas was about to discover that sometimes the most powerful weapon against wealth and privilege is a community that refuses to let love lose to money. Emily had been a social worker for 8 years, but she'd never seen anything like what happened in the 72 hours following Bradford Ashworth's custody filing. It started with Mrs. Rodriguez making a single phone call to Susan at the community center, but it spread through Riverside like wildfire, igniting a level of community activism that surprised everyone involved. "This isn't just about one family," Margaret from the library told Emily during an emergency meeting at the community center. "This is about whether love and commitment matter more than money and bloodlines. Every single-parent family in this city is watching to see what happens." The meeting had been called for Thursday evening, expecting maybe a dozen people to show up. Instead, over 60 community members packed into the small conference room, representing every corner of the girls' expanded world. Teachers, librarians, neighbors, parents from the school, volunteers from the community center, even Mr. Peterson from Thomas's warehouse, all united by their investment in a family they'd watched grow from crisis into something beautiful. Dr. Patricia Williams, the retired pediatrician, had brought medical documentation proving the girls' excellent physical and emotional health under Thomas's care. "In 30 years of practice," she told the gathered crowd, "I've rarely seen children who've experienced trauma adjust as successfully as these 3 have. Removing them from this environment would be medically contraindicated." Susan from the community center had prepared a presentation showing the girls' involvement in programs, their leadership with younger children, and their academic achievements since enrollment. "These aren't children who need rescue," she stated firmly. "These are children who are thriving exactly where they are." But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. Carlos, who had insisted on being included in the meeting despite his age, stood up on a chair so everyone could see him. "Isabella, Sophia, and Charlotte are my sisters," he announced with 8-year-old certainty. "They teach me things and help me with homework, and they're not scared anymore like when they first came. My daddy loves them, and they love us back. That's what families do." The room fell silent as this young boy articulated what all the adults were fighting for, with a clarity that cut through legal complexities and bureaucratic procedures. Emily watched Thomas during Carlos's speech and saw something shift in his expression. The fear and self-doubt that had plagued him since learning about the girl's inheritance was replaced by a quiet determination she recognized from that first night when he'd opened his door to 3 desperate little girls. Margaret Harrison, the estate attorney, had been attending these community meetings as an observer, trying to understand the situation she'd walked into. What she was witnessing challenged every assumption she'd made about what would be best for the Ashworth heirs. "I need to be transparent with you," Margaret told Emily after one particularly emotional testimony from Mrs. Chen about watching the family support each other through daily challenges. "Bradford Ashworth has significant legal advantages. He has blood relation, unlimited financial resources, and the backing of a trust that requires certain standards of care. But Emily sensed there was more, but I've been documenting everything I've observed here. The level of community investment, the children's obvious attachment and stability, the quality of care they're receiving, it's unprecedented in my experience. Family court judges are required to consider the best interests of the children above all other factors." The breakthrough came when Margaret made a suggestion that surprised everyone. "What if we could satisfy the trust requirements while keeping the family intact?" She explained that the Ashworth Trust had provisions for alternative guardianship arrangements if they could be shown to serve the children's best interests. With proper legal framework, Thomas could potentially be appointed as their official guardian, while the trust provided educational and financial support. The girls would have access to their inheritance and the opportunities it provides, but they'd remain in the home where they're thriving, Margaret elaborated. "It would require Bradford's agreement, but if we can demonstrate that this arrangement serves the children better than traditional custody." Emily felt hope stirring for the first time since this crisis began. What would we need to prove? That Thomas can provide the stability, love, and guidance they need, with community support filling any gaps in resources. Essentially, we'd need to show that this unconventional family structure works better than a conventional wealthy household. The community response to this possibility was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, commitments poured in that transformed the legal landscape entirely. Mrs. Rodriguez offered to coordinate with the trust to ensure the girls received the highest quality education available, including private tutoring in subjects that interested them. Dr. Williams volunteered to serve as their primary physician and coordinate any specialized medical care their inheritance could provide. Margaret from the library proposed creating a specialized reading program that would challenge their advanced abilities while maintaining their connection to the community center. Susan developed a comprehensive plan for extracurricular activities that would give the girls exposure to arts, music, sports, and leadership opportunities while keeping them grounded in their neighborhood community. Even Mr. Peterson stepped forward, offering Thomas a promotion to warehouse supervisor that would provide better hours and increased salary to better support his expanded family. But the most surprising development came from an unexpected alliance. Dr. Richard Hayes, a child psychologist who had been quietly observing the situation at Margaret Harrison's request, delivered a report that changed everything. "I've evaluated hundreds of children in custody disputes," Dr. Hayes told the emergency family court hearing that Bradford had demanded. "These 3 girls exhibit the strongest attachment bonds and emotional stability I've seen in children who've experienced trauma. Separating them from their current caregivers would constitute psychological harm that could take years to overcome." Bradford Ashworth, who had arrived in Riverside expecting to collect his young cousins and return them to a proper life in Los Angeles, found himself facing a united community that refused to be intimidated by his wealth or legal connections. The turning point came during the girl's own testimony to the judge. In a private session, Isabella, Sophia, and Charlotte spoke with a clarity and maturity that impressed everyone present. "We know we have family we never met," Isabella told Judge Patricia Morrison. "But Thomas is our daddy, and Carlos is our brother, and Emily is like our aunt. They saved us when nobody else could. We don't want a different family. We want our family." Charlotte, speaking more confidently than she had since arriving at Thomas's door, added, "Thomas taught us that families aren't just about blood. They're about who stays when things get hard." Judge Morrison, a veteran of family court who had seen every variation of custody dispute imaginable, was visibly moved by the children's testimony and the unprecedented level of community support. Documented in their case, the ruling came 3 days later. Thomas would be granted legal guardianship of the 3 girls, with the Ashworth Trust providing educational funding and establishing college accounts for their future. Bradford would have supervised visitation rights to maintain family connections, but the girls would remain in the home where they had found stability and love. "This court finds," Judge Morrison stated, "that the best interests of these children are served by maintaining their placement with Mr. Martinez, supported by the remarkable community that has formed around this family. Money cannot buy the kind of commitment and care these children are receiving, and this court will not remove them from an environment where they are clearly thriving." The courtroom erupted in quiet celebration as Thomas, Emily, and their supporters realized they had achieved the impossible. They had fought wealth and privilege with love and community, and they had won. That evening, as the extended family gathered at Thomas's apartment for a celebration dinner that spilled out into the hallway and courtyard, Emily reflected on what she had witnessed. An ordinary man's decision to help 3 desperate children had created a ripple effect that transformed an entire community and redefined what family could mean. The girls, meanwhile, seemed to understand that something important had been decided in their favor. But their primary concern was simpler. They were home, they were safe, and they were loved. As Sophia told Thomas while helping him serve cake to their many guests, "We knew you wouldn't let anyone take us away. That's what daddies do." 2 years later, Emily stood in the backyard of Thomas's new house, a modest but comfortable home the Ashworth Trust had helped him purchase in the same neighborhood, watching what had become an annual tradition. The Found Family Festival, as the girls had dubbed it, brought together everyone who had played a role in their story, celebrating not just their legal victory, but the ongoing miracle of their chosen family. The transformation in all their lives had been remarkable, but perhaps none more so than Thomas himself. The overwhelmed, struggling single father had evolved into a confident parent who balanced the girls' privileged opportunities with the values of hard work and community service that had saved them all. "Look at him." Susan from the community center said to Emily, nodding toward Thomas as he helped Carlos and Bradford Ashworth, now a regular and welcome visitor, set up tables for the afternoon's festivities. "He's not the same man who opened his door to those girls 2 years ago." Emily smiled, remembering the fearful, broken person she'd watched through thin apartment walls. Thomas had accepted the promotion Mr. Peterson offered, eventually becoming warehouse manager, but he'd also started taking evening classes toward a degree in social work. "I want to help other families the way this community helped us," he told Emily when he'd announced his career change. The girls themselves had flourished, beyond anyone's expectations. The Trust's educational provisions had given them access to private tutoring, music lessons, art classes, and travel opportunities that broadened their worldview, while their neighborhood community kept them grounded in values of kindness and service. Isabella had become a confident leader who organized charity drives at school and mentored younger students struggling with family transitions. Her latest project involved creating care packages for children entering emergency foster placement, a mission that reflected her deep understanding of what it meant to feel lost and alone. Sophia had discovered a gift for languages and was already fluent in Spanish and French, planning to become a diplomat who could help families separated by immigration. Her gentle nature and emotional intelligence made her a natural peacemaker, often mediating conflicts between her siblings with wisdom that amazed the adults around her. Charlotte had emerged from her shell to become an accomplished artist whose paintings now decorated not just their home, but the community center and library as well. Her art therapy sessions with Dr. Williams had evolved into a program where she helped other children express their emotions through creativity. Carlos, now 10, had grown into his role as protective big brother while maintaining his own interests in soccer and science. The dynamic between all four children had evolved into something that amazed everyone who witnessed it, a genuine sibling bond that transcended biology and was strengthened by shared experience. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation had been in Maria Santos herself. After 18 months in rehabilitation and recovery, she had awakened to find her daughters thriving in a life she never could have imagined for them. The reunion had been emotional and complex, but Maria's gratitude to Thomas and Emily had eventually evolved into a friendship that enriched all their lives. I ran away from my family's wealth because I thought money corrupted everything it touched, Maria told Emily during one of their regular coffee meetings. But watching Thomas use the Trust's resources to strengthen our community rather than separate himself from it, that's taught me that it's not money that's the problem. It's how you choose to use it. Maria had moved into a small apartment nearby, close enough to be part of the girls' daily lives, but far enough to respect the family bonds they'd formed with Thomas. She'd also become involved in the community center's programs, using her business education to help other families navigate financial challenges and resource access. The legal victory had created ripple effects that extended far beyond their immediate family. Emily's documentation of their case had been studied by family courts across the state, contributing to precedents that prioritized children's emotional bonds and community support over purely biological or financial considerations. Margaret Harrison had left her high-powered Los Angeles firm to open a family law practice in Riverside, specializing in unconventional custody arrangements and community-supported families. This case changed how I understand what family means, she'd explained to Emily. I want to help other families find creative solutions that put children's well-being first. Dr. Williams had established a community health program funded partially by the Ashworth Trust, providing free medical care to families who couldn't afford traditional health care. The program had become a model for other communities, proving that private philanthropy could effectively support public health when guided by genuine care rather than institutional obligation. The community center had expanded its programs significantly, partly through trust funding, but mostly through the increased volunteer engagement inspired by the Martinez family's story. People who had never considered themselves activists had become advocates for children and families, creating a network of support that helped dozens of other families navigate crises. Mrs. Rodriguez had started a teachers' support program that connected educators with community resources, ensuring that children facing family disruption had professional advocates within their schools. The program had prevented numerous family separations by addressing problems before they became crises. Even Bradford Ashworth had been transformed by his experience. His initial attempt to claim the girls had evolved into a genuine relationship with his cousins and deep respect for the family they'd chosen. He'd become a regular visitor and had redirected much of his own wealth towards supporting programs that kept families together rather than separating them. I thought I knew what those girls needed, Bradford told Thomas during last year's festival. I thought wealth and proper society connections were what mattered. But watching them thrive here, seeing how this community has shaped them into remarkable young women, I realize I would have given them privilege, but you gave them something much more valuable. You gave them belonging. The festival itself had become a celebration that drew hundreds of people from across Riverside. What had started as a thank you gathering for their immediate supporters had grown into an annual event that raised funds for family support programs and celebrated the power of community action. This year's festival featured displays of the girls' artwork, performances by the community center's music program, and booths representing all the organizations that had become part of their extended family. The centerpiece was a photography exhibit Emily had organized, showing the progression of their family from that first desperate night to the confident, joyful group they'd become. As the afternoon celebration continued around them, Emily found herself standing with Thomas in the same spot where they'd had so many important conversations over the past 2 years. The kitchen table had been moved outside for the party, but it remained the heart of their family discussions and decision-making. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't opened that door?" Emily asked him. Thomas watched the girls playing with Carlos and a group of neighborhood children, their laughter mixing with the conversations of adults who had become their chosen extended family. "I try not to think about that," he admitted. "It's too painful to imagine." "You know what I think about?" Emily continued. "I think about how many other families are out there right now, one moment away from finding each other. How many people are walking past opportunities to change lives because they don't think they're qualified or capable." Thomas nodded thoughtfully. "The girls taught me that love isn't about being qualified. It's about showing up when someone needs you to show up." As the sun began to set over their celebration, Emily reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them all together. A desperate knock on a door had created a family that redefined what family could mean. A community's decision to support love over convention had created precedents that would help other families for years to come. The girls who had arrived with nothing but garbage bags and fear had grown into confident young women who understood that their true inheritance wasn't the millions in their trust funds, but the knowledge that they were deeply loved and had the power to love others in return. And Thomas, who had once believed he had nothing to offer anyone, had discovered that sometimes the greatest gift you can give is simply refusing to turn away when someone needs help. As Emily helped clean up after the festival, she found a note one of the girls had left on the kitchen table. Written in Isabella's careful handwriting, it read, "Thank you for helping Daddy Thomas save us, but mostly, thank you for helping us save him too." It was, Emily thought, the perfect summary of what they had all learned, that rescue is never a one-way street, and that the people we save have an extraordinary power to save us right back. 7 years after that desperate midnight knock, Emily received a phone call that would test everything they had built together. The voice on the other end was shaky, uncertain but unmistakably familiar. It was Maria Santos, calling from a lawyer's office in Los Angeles with news that would shake their family to its core. "Emily," Maria said, her voice tight with emotion, "my father is alive. Richard Ashworth, Victoria's father. He's been alive this whole time and he wants to meet his granddaughters." Emily felt her stomach drop. Richard Ashworth, the man they'd been told had died 2 years earlier, the patriarch whose death had supposedly triggered the trust provisions that allowed the girls to stay with Thomas. He was not only alive, but actively seeking contact with his granddaughters. "How is that possible?" Emily asked, her mind racing through the legal implications. "Bradford told us he'd died. The trust documents—" "Bradford lied," Maria said quietly. "Not maliciously, but My father disowned me when I disappeared with the girls. Bradford thought it would be easier for everyone if the girls believed he was dead, rather than knowing their grandfather had rejected them. But now father is dying for real, and he wants to make amends. The revelation hit Emily like a physical blow. For 7 years, the girls had been told they had no living grandparents, no extended family beyond Bradford's occasional visits. Now suddenly, there was a grandfather who had been alive all along, a man with legal rights and emotional claims that could potentially disrupt everything. That evening, Emily sat in Thomas's living room, the same space where they'd had so many crucial conversations over the years, watching him process this impossible news. The girls, now 15, were upstairs doing homework, unaware that their family structure was about to be tested again. "He's dying," Thomas said slowly, reading through the documents Maria's lawyer had sent. "Pancreatic cancer. Maybe 3 months. And he wants to meet them before he dies." "Yes," Emily confirmed. "But Thomas, there's more. According to these papers, Richard Ashworth never actually transferred full control of the trust to Bradford. He's still the primary trustee, which means he has significant legal authority over the girls' inheritance and potentially their guardianship." Thomas looked up sharply. "Are you saying he could try to take them?" "I'm saying we don't know what he wants. The lawyer was very careful about that. He's requesting a meeting, nothing more. But we need to be prepared for any possibility." The conversation they had with the girls that night was one of the hardest of their family's journey together. Isabella, Sophia, and Charlotte sat around the kitchen table, where they'd shared thousands of meals and countless important discussions, listening as Thomas and Emily explained that their family history was more complicated than they'd understood. "So, our grandfather has been alive this whole time?" Isabella asked, her voice carefully controlled. At 15, she'd developed the poise and analytical thinking that would serve her well in her future advocacy work. But Emily could see the hurt and confusion in her eyes. "Yes," Thomas said gently. "But sweetheart, the reasons why you never knew him are complicated. Your mother made difficult choices to protect you, and Uncle Bradford made choices he thought would protect you too." Sophia, always the family's emotional caretaker, asked the question Emily had been dreading. "Does he want us to come live with him?" "We don't know what he wants," Emily answered honestly. "But I want you to understand that no matter what happens, no matter what anyone says or claims, you belong here. You're Thomas's daughters legally, emotionally, and in every way that matters." Charlotte, now 15 but still the family's quietest member, spoke with a wisdom that surprised all of them. "I think we should meet him, not because we have to, but because everyone deserves a chance to say they're sorry before they die." The meeting was arranged for the following weekend at a neutral location, the conference room of Margaret Harrison's law office. Richard Ashworth arrived in a wheelchair, accompanied by a nurse and Bradford, who looked as uncomfortable as Emily had ever seen him. Emily watched the encounter with professional fascination and personal anxiety. Richard Ashworth was clearly dying, gaunt, pale, but with eyes that were unmistakably the same brown as his granddaughters. When he saw them for the first time, his carefully composed facade cracked completely. "My God," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "You look just like your mother did at your age, just like Victoria." The girls stood close together, presenting a united front that spoke to their years of facing uncertainty together. Isabella stepped forward as their spokesperson, demonstrating the leadership skills that had developed through years of being the protective older sister. "Why didn't you want to know us?" she asked directly, without accusation but with the kind of straightforward honesty that cut through pretense. Richard closed his eyes for a moment before answering. "Because I was angry," Angry at your mother for leaving, angry at your father for taking her away from the life I'd planned for her, angry at myself for not understanding what she needed. I convinced myself that if Victoria wanted to disappear, then she and her children were no longer my family. But we were just babies, Sophia said quietly. We didn't do anything wrong. No, Richard agreed, his voice breaking. You didn't do anything wrong. I did. I let pride and anger rob me of 7 years with my granddaughters, and now I'm dying with the knowledge that I missed watching you grow up because I was too stubborn to admit I was wrong. The conversation that followed was painful, honest, and ultimately healing in ways none of them had expected. Richard shared stories about Victoria's childhood, showing them photographs and mementos they'd never seen. He explained the family history, the business empire, the social expectations that had driven Victoria away. But most importantly, he listened as the girls told him about their life, their rescue by Thomas, their community in Riverside, their school achievements, their friendships, their dreams for the future. Emily watched him realize that these poised, confident young women had been shaped by experiences he could never have provided. The man who raised you, Richard said to Thomas, at the end of their 3-hour meeting, did a better job than I ever could have. You gave them something I never learned how to give Victoria, unconditional love without expectations. The weeks that followed tested their family bonds in unexpected ways. Richard asked to spend time with the girls regularly, wanting to build relationships before his death. Some visits were wonderful. He shared family stories, taught them about their heritage, and marveled at their accomplishments. Others were difficult, as grief and regret made him emotional and sometimes demanding. The real test came when Richard's condition worsened rapidly, and he asked the girls to consider spending his final weeks at his estate in Los Angeles, where he could have more time with them and they could understand their family legacy more completely. He's not trying to take us away, Isabella explained to Thomas after a long family discussion. He just wants to know us before he dies. And honestly, I think we need to understand where we came from to really know who we are. The 2 weeks the girls spent at the Ashworth estate were transformative for everyone involved. They returned to Riverside with a deeper understanding of their mother's choices, their family's history, and their own identity, but they also returned with absolute certainty about where they belonged. It's beautiful there, Charlotte told Emily, describing the mansion and grounds where their mother had grown up. But it felt like a museum, not a home. Home is here with you and Daddy Thomas and Carlos and our community. Richard Ashworth died peacefully 6 weeks later, surrounded by his granddaughters and the family they had chosen. His final words to Thomas were, "Thank you for giving them what I couldn't, the freedom to become themselves." In his will, Richard had made one final gesture of understanding. Rather than trying to control the girls' inheritance or dictate their future, he had established a trust that would fund their education and community work while ensuring they remained with the family that had nurtured them. Emily stood in the cemetery after Richard's funeral, watching Thomas comfort the girls as they grieved. For a grandfather they'd known only briefly, but who had given them closure about their past. The test of time had proved what she'd always believed, that families built on choice and love were stronger than those built on obligation and expectation. "Are you okay?" Thomas asked the girls as they prepared to return to Riverside. Isabella answered for all of them. "We're sad he's gone, but we're grateful we got to know him. And we're grateful we already knew who our real family was before we met him. It made it easier to love him without feeling like we had to choose." As they drove home to their life in Riverside, Emily reflected on how this unexpected chapter had actually strengthened rather than threatened their family bonds. The girls had faced the ultimate test, a wealthy grandfather offering them their birthright, and had chosen love over luxury, community over status, the family that had raised them over the family that shared their blood. The test of time had proven that what they'd built together was unshakable, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. And sometimes, Emily thought, the strongest foundations are built not just on love, but on love that has been tested and chosen again and again. 10 years after 3 little girls changed his life forever, Thomas Martinez stood in the conference room of the Martinez Foundation for Family Advocacy, looking out at the assembled group of young people who had gathered for their annual leadership summit. Among them were Isabella, Sophia, and Charlotte, now 18 and preparing for college, but also dozens of other young advocates who had been inspired by their story to become voices for children and families in crisis. The foundation itself had grown from a small community program into a national organization that had influenced family policy in all 50 states. But as Thomas watched these young leaders planning their next initiatives, he was reminded that the most important changes were still happening, one conversation, one open door, one family at a time. 10 years ago, I thought my biggest responsibility was paying rent and keeping my son fed, Thomas told the group as he opened the summit. I never imagined that opening my door to 3 scared little girls would lead to this, to all of you, to everything we've built together. But that's the thing about love and courage. You never know how far the ripples will travel. Isabella, now a freshman at Stanford studying public policy, had become the foundation's youth spokesperson. Her journey from terrified 8-year-old to confident advocate had captured national attention, but she remained grounded in the values that Thomas and their Riverside community had taught her. People often ask me what it was like to go from homeless to heiress overnight, Isabella said during her presentation to the summit. But that's not really our story. Our story is about going from lost to found, from alone to family, from hopeless to having a purpose bigger than ourselves. The money was just a detail. Sophia, studying international relations at Georgetown, had spent her summer working with refugee families, applying the community support model she'd learned in Riverside to help displaced children find stability and belonging. Her fluency in multiple languages and deep understanding of trauma had made her remarkably effective at building bridges between different communities. Every refugee family I work with reminds me of us that first night, Sophia reflected during a panel discussion. They have nothing but each other. They're facing a system they don't understand, and they need someone to believe in them before they can believe in themselves. That's what Thomas did for us, and now we get to do it for others. Charlotte had channeled her artistic gifts into a different kind of advocacy. Her multimedia installations about family, belonging, and chosen identity had been featured in museums across the country, but she still returned regularly to Riverside to run art therapy sessions for children in crisis. Art saved me in those early days, Charlotte explained to a group of social workers learning about creative interventions. When I couldn't find words for what I was feeling, I could paint it. When I felt lost, I could draw my new family and remember I belonged somewhere. Now I teach other kids that they can create their own stories, even when the world feels out of control. Carlos, now 22 and a recent graduate of the social work program Thomas had helped establish at UC Riverside, represented a unique perspective in their movement. As the biological son who had gained sisters through crisis, he'd become an expert on how families could expand and strengthen rather than being diminished by including others. I watch people struggle with the idea of taking in children who aren't theirs, Carlos said during his presentation about sibling relationships. But my sisters aren't less my family because we don't share DNA. If anything, choosing to be family makes the bond stronger because it's based on love and commitment rather than just biology. Emily, now 50, and serving as the foundation's executive director, had watched this evolution with the amazement of someone who had been present for every crucial moment. Her apartment next to Thomas's had been the observation post from which she'd witnessed a miracle unfold, and now she was helping to scale that miracle across the country. "When I think about that first night," Emily told the summit participants, "I remember thinking I was just helping my neighbor handle a crisis. I had no idea we were starting a movement that would reach thousands of families. But that's how real change happens, not through grand gestures, but through ordinary people, making extraordinary choices to care." The summit itself had become an annual gathering that drew young advocates from across the nation. Many were former foster children, others were biological children from families that had grown through adoption or kinship care, and still others were simply young people who believed that every child deserved a family that chose them actively and completely. This year's summit had a special significance. It marked the completion of the Martinez Family Resource Centers, a network of community-based support hubs that had been established in 100 cities across America. Each center operated on the Riverside model, combining professional social services with organized community volunteers to create comprehensive safety nets for families in crisis. The data from these centers told a remarkable story. Family separation rates had dropped by an average of 40% in participating communities. Child welfare costs had decreased while family stability had increased. But more importantly, thousands of children who might have entered the foster care system had instead found support that allowed them to remain safely with their families. "The numbers are important," Thomas acknowledged during his keynote address. "But the real measure of our success is in the individual stories. Every family that stays together, every child who finds belonging, every person who discovers they have the power to change someone's life. That's what this is really about." The foundation had also established a scholarship program that sent young people from community-supported families to college, with the expectation that they would return to their communities as advocates and leaders. Isabella, Sophia, and Charlotte were among the first recipients, but they were now joined by hundreds of others who understood that their education was an investment in their community's futures. Bradford Ashworth, now 65 and serving as the foundation's board chair, had found purpose he'd never experienced during his years managing the family's business interests. His transformation from someone who had tried to claim the girls based on legal rights to someone who understood that real family was about emotional bonds had made him a powerful advocate for redefining kinship care. "I thought I knew what those girls needed," Bradford reflected during the summit's closing ceremony. "I thought blood and money were what mattered. But this community taught me that what children really need is someone who sees their potential and commits to nurturing it, regardless of biological connection or social expectations." Maria Santos, now 45 and serving as the foundation's Director of Parent Advocacy, had become a powerful voice for supporting parents through medical and financial crises, rather than separating families when systems failed them. Her experience of nearly losing her daughters to circumstances beyond her control had given her unique insights into how communities could support family preservation. "When I was in the hospital fighting for my life, I had to trust strangers with my children's welfare," Maria told the assembled advocates. "The fact that they didn't just keep my girls safe, but helped them thrive and find their voices, that's what I want for every parent facing crisis. I want them to know their community will hold their family together until they can take over again." The summit concluded with a tradition that had developed over the years. Each participant wrote a letter to a child somewhere who was facing family crisis, sharing their story and offering hope. These letters were distributed through the resource centers to young people who needed to know that their current circumstances didn't define their future possibilities. Isabella's letter that year was addressed to a girl facing placement in foster care. 10 years ago, I stood on a stranger's doorstep with everything I owned in a garbage bag, scared and alone, and certain that my life was over. Today, I'm preparing for college, working to change policies that affect families like ours, and surrounded by people who chose to love me even when they didn't have to. Your story isn't over yet. It's just beginning. And somewhere out there is a person who doesn't know it yet, but they're waiting to become part of your family story. As the summit participants departed, returning to their communities with new ideas and renewed commitment, Thomas found himself standing in the same spot where Emily had first told him about the girl's inheritance 10 years earlier. But now he understood that the real inheritance had never been about money. The girls taught me that we don't just inherit things from the people who came before us, Thomas reflected to Emily as they watched the young advocates board their buses home. We also inherit responsibilities to the people who come after us. Every family we help stay together, every child who finds belonging, every person who discovers they can make a difference. That's the legacy that really matters. Emily smiled, thinking about the shy, overwhelmed man she'd watched through her apartment walls a decade earlier. You know what I think our real legacy is? She said. It's proving that ordinary people can change the world just by refusing to look away when someone needs help. Every person who heard this story decided to open their own door, foster a child, volunteer in their community, or just pay attention to their neighbors. They're all part of this legacy now. As they prepared to lock up the foundation offices, Thomas paused to look at the wall of photos that documented 10 years of families helped, advocates trained, and communities transformed. At the center was the original photo from their first Bound Family Festival. Thomas, Emily, the 4 children, and dozens of community members who had chosen to make strangers into family. 10 years, Thomas mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like a lifetime. Both, Emily agreed. That's how you know it was real. Tonight, somewhere in America, another desperate family would face a crisis. But because of the movement that had grown from one man's decision to care when others turned away, there would be communities ready to respond, advocates prepared to fight for family preservation, and people who understood that opening your heart to someone in need might just be the beginning of changing the world. The story that had started with an act of compassion had become proof that love, when supported by community and scaled through commitment, could indeed create miracles that lasted forever. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.